Hey crew, it's Ben and I am back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Hiram Butler. This is The Goal of Life. We are up to chapter 20, The Image and the Likeness. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points of interest that are brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but some people seem to find enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists and possibly some individual videos linked in the corner above and in the box down below, along with the original source material, so that you can get a better understanding of why I stand where I do. Of particular note, almost certainly again today, is going to be the Unconventional Bible Study, where I have 161 videos that I talk about my personal beliefs and how I came to them. You are also more than welcome to tag along in those. With that being said, we are going to dive in and begin our discussion of what is effectively the last chapter in this section. I thought there was two, but this is going to be a short video today because this is a standalone chapter. The next chapter really goes into the next section of the book, and so it will be included with the videos for the next section of the book. The image and the likeness. In bringing before your minds this wonderful ultimate of the purpose of God in the creation of the world and of its inhabitants, man, the most that we can do is call your attention to certain laws, the 8 laws of creation, and forces already visible and active among men. This ultimate has had no physical standing in the world. It has existed only in the creative thought, and therefore no language has yet been formed capable of portraying its realities. That's what I'm doing. As we have briefly stated, the methods by which man is to come into the image of God and the likeness of God, we shall now give a brief synopsis of the manner in which the image and the likeness are to be brought into form. Through the regeneration, every member of that great body of the first ripe fruit of the earth, the 144,000, becomes exceedingly sensitive. In other words, all the life currents and mind powers become intensified, and the sense nature becomes so acute that each member is conscious of every thought, feeling, and emotion of every other member. Even now, we find that there are men and women who, through the evolutionary process alone, have become so refined and intensified that they are able to know and read the thoughts of others. Within the last few years, many mind readers have been before the public, and some of them have demonstrated to the satisfaction of investigators that they can read the thoughts of persons. When men and women have lived the high and holy life taught by the Christ, which includes regeneration, for he lived a celibate life, that is a matter of some contention. Conserving all the life generated by the body, then every function to their bodies will be increased and intensified, so that we may say to each individual will become 12 times greater in mind power and all the powers of the body than he was before he began to live the regenerate life. Once again, I am going to emphasize the fact that you are not meant to live a chaste life. We are also going to go ahead and step on as many toes as possible right here and point out one simple fact of Jewish life. Now, I'm not of the Jewish faith, but I am fairly familiar with the goings-on, right? At the age of 13, you have what is called a bar mitzvah. It is a ceremony celebrating the fact that you have attained manhood. Females have what is called a bat mitzvah. It's basically the same thing for them. Part of that is that you are now eligible for marriage. At the age of 13, it was time for you to begin contemplating becoming a new family unit. There was not an immediate, okay, you're 13, now you're married, right? That's not how that happened, but that is where you begin the process. You build a house, you start investigating potential mates. There is a whole process that goes into that, but there is a 0% chance that any particular person in the Jewish faith as a man would be listened to, right? Nobody would listen to anything that you had to say if you had not been married. If you were not Like, you could be a widower and not married, and people will listen to you. But if you had been celibate and not married at all, you were not considered worthy of listening to. That is something that Christianity seems to have forgotten. It is a truth, however, in the faith. The only people who were worth listening to, the only way to become a rabbi or a teacher, was to have been married, to have found the fulfillment and the growth that comes from that relationship. You are meant to have a mate. Some people, that is of the same sex. I know that's going to step on toes, but I don't mind stepping on toes. I believe that God uses same-sex interest to close off gene pools, right? He gives you the chance to be happy, live a wonderful, fulfilled life with a partner who helps to develop you and your personal growth, all without having children. That is a possibility. Some people are opposite sex attract and don't have children. But if you were not married, you were not listened to. You would not be a rabbi. Nobody would pay any attention to you whatsoever. That was a fact in those times. You don't have to like that, but it is truth. It is almost certain that in order to have been somebody who was listened to, Christ at least was married, probably divorced, or not divorced. That's the wrong word. I am not right on that. Probably a widower. Change is normally spurred by something intense, right? Whether it is an overdose situation spurring you to quit doing whatever drugs it is, or it is a physical situation where you got beat and you removed yourself from that situation. Grief is a strong motivator for change. It is entirely possible and most likely probable that he was at least a widower, but there is sufficient reasons, and we are not going to expound upon them in here, but there are sufficient reasons to believe that he was indeed married during the time of his ministry, that there was somebody who tagged along, who washed his feet with oil even, that he was more than likely married to. I know, I stepped on toes. Read the Bible study. All right. They not only become stronger and wiser, they become exceedingly sensitive and intense in their consciousness, and as they are governed by the spirit of love from God, they see in each other the child of God, and so they love each other as they love God, and as they love themselves. The character of this oneness is best explained by illustration. For example, imagine 12 such persons together in one room. Each one of the 12 has so far developed and is so perfectly in sympathy with the others that he feels every feeling and knows every thought of the others. When these 12 are first brought together, the reciprocal action of the thoughts and feelings produces a condition very much like that produced when a number of persons are talking at once, a state of confusion. But let one begin to speak and get the interest and attention of the others so as to focalize the thought, and the minds of the whole body would think together as one. Again, imagine this body of 12 to be a regenerate body, whose whole desire is to be centered in God and whose members have been begotten from above. Because God's Spirit is the life of the body must be one as God is one. Since each person necessarily expresses a function of some part of the great man, as Aries, the head, Taurus, the neck, etc., and each seeks to express only the mind of God, he makes no effort to be that which he is not, but supplies his own particular mind quality to the whole body. And whatever particular function is called into action, the body unites in giving power to that function to express itself. Its thought would be the aggregate of all the members. In precisely the same way as when one attempts to lift a heavy weight with the right hand, the will and every function of the physical body are called upon to supply their quota of energy for its accomplishment. Who has not realized while talking to a number of persons that there were certain persons in the audience that gave special inspiration, that supplied a mind power so marked the speaker could not but realize it? So it would be in the bringing together of 12 persons in perfect harmony with the mind, the Spirit of the Father. God's Spirit being the life of all, they would run together as so many drops of water, yet every individual would maintain his own consciousness. But his consciousness would be enlarged, and his realization would be increased to comprehend the consciousness and realization of the whole body. Each member's capacity and brain power would be 12 times as strong and capable in every department. That's not a good logical chain. As man lives in his memories and realizes in his consciousness, his realizations constitute his limitations. But when he takes into his consciousness the consciousness of 11 others, his realizations have been augmented 11-fold. This increase of consciousness on the part of one does not detract from the others, but, on the contrary, they each extend their sphere of consciousness in the same ratio. In the organizing of the body of Christ, the bringing into existence Yahweh Elohim as king and ruler of this planet, each individual in his preparation must have consecrated his life to God, promised absolute obedience to and acquiescence in the knowledge and wisdom derived from the Spirit. He must have undergone a long course of training wherein the newly begotten child of God grows to manhood and takes absolute possession of the physical body and becomes fully conscious of the mind of the Father, of Yahweh Elohim, the great body of perfected souls that created the world. Being thus conscious of the mind of the Father, when the Father wills to build the house, see first chapter of Haggai, his Spirit will move within each individual and cause him to be conscious that is the will of the Father, and therefore it is the will of each to come out from the world, to gather together into one place, the place prepared of God, where the whole body will be led and instructed by the Spirit, that each may be his natural spiritual self. Every individual will be perfectly free to express his own higher spiritual nature, and then, as the interests of all are one, that is, the expression of the body, mind, and will of the Father, the whole body of 144,000 souls, or 288,000 persons, will be as one individual, and the sphere of each individual will be so enlarged as to embrace the whole body. As the Spirit said through the Apostle, "For as the body is one, and hath many members, and all the members of the body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ." We shall now consider 144,000 regenerate persons, built into one body, through the expansion of a sphere of consciousness to include the entirety of the body. Let 1 represent a person's normal powers, 12 represent a person's powers after living the regenerate life. 2 times 144,000 is 288,000, or the entire body, men and women. This has not been sufficiently explained through here, right? Like, I understand the concept, but you're wrong. You're just wrong. The 144,000 is a specific thing that is mentioned in the Bible. It is. It is people who are pure and have never sinned. Not that they were regenerated and became new people. It is someone who has never felt the temptation of flesh. As far as I know, those aren't even existent. Much less this 288,000 extrapolation which you make because of the duality of man containing both male and female. That is a fallacy, and it is incorrect, and I was hoping that through the course of this there would be some better explanation of it, but it is not. That is simply just a logical fallacy. Then the powers of the entire body will be represented by 288,000 times 12, or 3,456,000. Or the powers of the body will be represented by 3,456,000 times the powers of a normal individual. Can you imagine the power of such a body? A body in which, when one member is called into action, the whole body contributes all its powers in the execution of that action, in the same manner that our own body functions. Now, what he is trying to do here is a thing, right? We can come together. Me and you and other people can come into accordance to achieve something. And because of that, our power is magnified by each person who becomes part of it. And while there can be a number of 144,000 or a number of 288,000 who are doing that, that is not what is being referenced by the 144,000 in the Bible, straight off the top. And it is told to you that as few as 3 can accomplish your purpose. Now, you can do that by uniting the 3 into one within yourself, as above, so below, and all of those various things. But if me and you and one other person come into accordance in prayer and we intentionally focus ourselves in the right way, then we can have a greater magnitude of effect. In large part, that is what is happening with the control systems. The control systems are harvesting your energy. The entities behind the control systems are the target of that. And while you may think that your entity that you are devoting that energy to is the correct one, it does not necessarily mean that it is so. I don't know that I can say that in another way that will allow me to stay on YouTube and not offend people in such a way that even steel toes wouldn't help. But if there is a requirement for blood sacrifice, you are feeding the wrong energy. You are focusing on the wrong things. You are absolutely not on the narrow path. That's about as clear as I can state that. In this great body, as we have seen, whatever the body wills, or rather whatever the Spirit of Yahweh, who has become the body, life of the body, wills, each member of the body wills, and whatever the will determines upon and centers the activities of the body in, the powers of the whole body, so far as necessary, help to accomplish. And I want to make sure that it is abundantly clear here also that I am not just talking about the religious control systems. Systems of government can fall prey to this just as easily. The powers of division work just as efficiently. I am on the red side. I haven't made that, I try not to get too political, right? But I am on the side of conservatism. I am on the side of individual responsibility. I am on the side of logic and reason. And so I am on the red side. But I bear in mind that the red side can be just as divisive as the blue side. Not normally, right? But it is entirely possible. I separate myself from the ones who are in the division, right? There is a separation. That is a truth. I cannot align myself with someone who is endeavoring to ensure the eradication of new life. I cannot do that. I cannot get behind the blood sacrifice that is the ending of the innocence of the knitting together of the DNA, if you understand what I'm talking about. I cannot align myself with that. I cannot align myself with the sexual deviance that is prevalent in the entertainment industry. I cannot align myself with those bodies. But as a whole, you do have to make decisions. There is power in numbers, and if I stand by myself, I accomplish absolutely nothing outside of the manifestation, which is part of the process. I choose to align myself with those who hold my values more than the ones who do not. So I align myself with the red, but that division itself is feeding an entity, right? The division of the government is a real thing. The powers and the focus that you place upon it does feed those particular entities. The powers of division are a powerful entity. What their names are and how they are called, some of them I know, some of them I don't, and none of them will I call upon or talk about out loud, because that is focusing energy. Once you can wrap your head around every single thing external from you is a focus of energy. Whether it is positive or negative is completely a different question. It is a focus of energy. If you are focusing your energy on it, you are feeding that energy. I am focusing on the powers of positivity. I am focusing on seeking God's will and enacting that out in life And so myself aligning with these powers is feeding the positive part of that. I try not to engage in the negative side of that. I do that on TikTok. If you go through my TikTok, every once in a while I will post something political, and sometimes it is a little bit salty, but salt is a necessary part of life too. But for the most part, I am focusing upon that which I wish to be and not upon that which I wish was not. That is a focus of energy. It is feeding a control system, but the control system that I am trying to feed is individual responsibility, positivity, and accomplishment. So, while the control systems of a religion are very real, they are not the only ones. Keep that in mind in everything you do, and you will start investing your energy into the correct places. All right. You, who knows something about the psychic power of a person to control an audience, can have some idea of the power of this body to control the world. Thus, it is made plain that God's methods are purely neutral. When the angels showed John in the Revelation that these are to be kings and priests unto God and to reign on the earth, we are not to understand that they are to attain that by some supernatural leap through the direct interposition of God. That is true almost all the time. Generally speaking, if you are looking for the giant movement, you're probably doing something wrong. By that I mean, if you are focusing on manifesting money, which we end with and we don't do, then you are trying to pull into your life the change immediate, right? Life is about the tweaks. It takes a very little tweak to change direction. 1 degree of difference over distance can make all the difference in reaching your goal or not. So if you are aligned with your goal and you keep that in your mind, then you move in that direction. But if you are off by 1 degree, you will miss your goal by a significant amount over time. So if you're going 1,000 miles, that 1 degree of difference can mean over 100 miles that you missed the mark. Keep your focus on the goal, on the intention, but don't try to adjust, even by a degree, the major parts. Focus instead upon which you want to call in, and that will course correct for you the things external from you. Don't manifest money, manifest abundance through God's will. God, give me what you think that I deserve. Let that be your prayer, not give me $1 million. It's a subtle difference, but we deal in subtle differences when we're dealing with subtle energies. Keep your focus correct. Follow the 8 laws of creation. That is part of it, right? Setting your goal with intentionality makes a difference. Find your goal, your guide star. For me, that is God's will. Hopefully for you it is too, but it doesn't have to be. It can be attaining material wealth, but generally speaking, if that is your goal, you're just going to manifest incorrectly. Seek to manifest what God has intended for you and keep that as your goal. That is my goal. That is my prayer. When I pray for manifestation of things, it is for God's will to come in the way which He intended to come in, not necessarily the way that I do. When God said, "Let us make man in our image, and like us, let them have dominion," He set in motion laws, which in their ultimate would bring the condition of existence that we have been trying to present to your mind. Once again, we are here, right? This is where we are meant to operate in, not in anticipation of later, not in regret of before, but rather in now. What can I do here, now, taking responsibility for myself, right? The condition into existence that we have been trying to present to your mind. A body of men and women that has become the temple of the living God, the God of the universe. Through the normal working of the mind of that body, normal because in unity with its creator, it necessarily takes control, exercises dominion over the entire mind currents, yea, and over all the laws and creative methods active in the planet Earth. In the organization of this body and its unity with the Spirit of God, we have a picture of the exact image and likeness. For this image and likeness is the ultimation of the divine purpose, purposed in the mind that never fails. The difference between this body and that of the Elohim is in degree and not in form or function, or methods of organizing. Consequently, if you have difficulty to how to conceive how Elohim, the God and creator of the world, can be a great body of men, separate individually and yet one, we think what has been said concerning the gathering, preparing, and organizing of this body of 144,000 makes it plain. We think it has been made plain that when Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness," this was the ultimate of the race, and that this gathering and organizing of the body are the fulfillment of that declaration. In order to help the mind to comprehend so great a thought, let us imagine a man that is both male and female in his own person, builded of molecules which are individual, men and women, a grand man, possessing far more than 288,000 times the power of any individual that we have heretofore known. Every function and organ of this man is filled with the Spirit of Yahweh, the God of the universe, imbued with his mind and with his will. Standing upon the highest plane of planetary unfoldment, he overlooks his dominion, the planet Earth, with its teeming millions who have developed to a point where they have outgrown their civilization and all their facilities, and are trembling upon the brink of a precipice, down which they must inevitably fall to the condition of 6,000 years ago, unless there is a Savior who is able and willing to create for them a new order of existence. The organism that we have been picturing will have abundant capacity to provide for this dying race the new conditions which are an absolute necessity to its perpetuity. From the thought that we have presented, it is evident that, judging by the known capacity of men, we have in such a body an aggregate mind and will, amply sufficient to lift civilization to a plane of action where it could go on developing. But how much more should we expect of a body when filled with the light of the infinite mind? Many of the leading physiologists of this 20th century are saying that the strenuous life developed in this cycle has produced and intensified qualities within man that have made him too sensitive and refined for the ordinary duties of life, and that, consequently, diseased conditions are rapidly gaining ground in organs too delicate for the strain put upon them. They conclude, therefore, that the race has reached the climax of its unfoldment and must fall back down to unknown depths, if not to annihilation. But there comes the voice of God through the prophet, ringing down the ages. "And Savior shall come up on Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdoms shall be Yahweh's." The object of this volume is to bring to you, mature souls of our age, the knowledge of the purpose of God concerning each individual, and to suggest methods by which not only you yourselves may be saved, but methods by which you may become members of that body which is to be the Savior of the world, the anointed Lord of all the earth. The way is so plain that, as the prophet Isaiah said, "Wayfaring men, yea, fools, shall not err therein." It is for you, as individuals, to consecrate your lives to God, and to desire above all things to know the truth that you may live in harmony with it. If you do this honestly and sincerely, then will God send into you the Spirit of truth that will lead you into all truth. Consequently, when you read this work, you will be caused to perceive the truths that it contains, which will put your mind in harmony with your consecration, so that you will no longer resist the leadings of the Spirit. Then will the angel of God take charge of your life and help you in every time of need, and lead you into the unity of the body of the Christ, the Savior of the world, brought to light in these pages. To that end, we consecrate these thoughts and pray that the Spirit of the Highest may attend them and illuminate your intelligence to receive them. The manifestation of the body. While the gathering of the body, according to the revelation, will be the work of a short time, yet we are told that the perfecting of this body, the perfecting of its dominion over the earth, will take 1,000 years. Again, a misinterpretation. It is hardly reasonable to suppose that there is anyone now living, even if placed under the most favorable conditions, who could be perfected in the likeness of God, Yahweh Elohim, in a short period. For all that belongs to attainment is not only a subjugation and conquest of the body, but it is also a growth of the soul and a growth and a development of the body into perfect harmony with the spirit. There is, however, a most potent factor that will work in this body, a factor yet unknown to the race, which is this: every member of the body, before he can become really one with the body, must have not only overcome generation, but he must have turned the currents of generation towards the brain and polarized the mind fixedly upon the spirit. You gotta pull the energy up and down if you want to be able to achieve the things that are of the spirit. Man, in polarizing the mind of the spirit at once, finds himself the focal point of the planet and of its subtle mind currents and electric forces. In generation, he is the head of the planet, leading creation. But when he has taken control of that creative power in himself and has brought it under the absolute control of the mind, he begins to possess dominion over the earth. The two forces active in creation, the positive and negative forces, represented and focalized in the man and the woman, produce in them, because of the unity of the two in the regeneration, a condition almost identical with that seen in the electric arc lamp. And after they have come into order, it will not be long before nature's energies will cause their bodies to become luminous and bright as the body of an angel, shining as the sun. This condition of luminosity could not obtain all at once. If it did, it would burn up and destroy the physical body. It will require years for the body to change from what we know now as material substance into this spiritual substance adapted to the fires of the divine life. No wonder that God by the prophet asked, "Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings?" The condition into which this body enters is a condition that transforms all that belongs to manhood and womanhood into the likeness of God. We read, and it is true, that God is a consuming fire and that God is love. We must bear in mind that it is not the gross fire that we know as fire, nor the gross passion that the world calls love, but it is a fire like that which Moses saw in the burning bush, which did not consume the bush. It is a fire that transmutes, consuming nothing but the grosser elements, transmuting them into the finer elements and to that more like itself. At the present time, we are so far from being like God that if God should speak to us in words, those words would consume us as a living fire. Therefore, those composing this body must abide for centuries in that living fire before they are wholly transformed into spiritual substance. I take exception to that. They will not die. But, as it was said of the Christ, it may be said concerning them, "Thou wilt not leave my soul in Hades," the grave, "neither wilt thou give the Holy One to see corruption. For they will have overcome death as did the Christ." In place of the body's seeing corruption, the same law that now perpetuates it will be accelerated. That is, we will take nourishment to replace the tissue that is being burned up by thought and action. Thus, we are continually eliminating the old and taking on new bodily substance. As this bodily substance taken on is qualitated by the mind active at the time, so the members of this grand body, as they burn out and eliminate the old, will take on more and more spiritualized substance. The time will finally come in the process when they will become as invisible to those upon our present plane as spirit is now invisible to man. The change with this body will be so gradual, however, that there will be no death. The process will be similar to that active in our present physical existence, by which we are constantly eliminating the old and taking on new flesh. It is necessary that this change should be gradual, for the members of this body are to be, as declared by the angel to John, kings and priests unto God and reign on the earth. That is, while they will execute kingly dominion, it will not be by force, not by arbitrary word of command, but by the spirit of divine love, for God is love. That love will cause humanity to love to obey, to desire to obey, to desire to live in harmony with the laws of God manifested through this body. They will be priests unto God, because they will be instructors and teachers to the world. If this change were too sudden, this body would soon be placed so far beyond the people who are to carry forward the work of generation that they would no longer be able to touch the mentality of the people. On the contrary, this process of refining being gradual, this body will be able to lead the world of humanity up with them. This was revealed to John on Patmos, as seen in Revelation, for, after the 144,000 were sealed, John saw an innumerable company of every nation, tribe, and people who came up to the same general relation with God as the 144,000. The world, now under the most potent conditions of spiritual and mental power, could not be redeemed and brought up to this physical and spiritual plane in less than 1,000 years. I take exception to that, and perhaps not at all of them in that time, for we read in Revelation that after the 1,000 years have expired, Satan, the adversary, will be loosed for a little season. This body, being, as we have said, the focal point of the planet, will be able, as was the Christ, to command the unclean spirits and to control them absolutely. That is possible now. And in order that the world may be led up to this high plane, the dark influences that now hinder the progress of the race must be bound so that their power over the people will cease. No. After the race has been redeemed, after the reign of 1,000 years of this body upon the earth, the adverse forces must be let loose. There will be those who are unfit for this new order of life, and they must be given the choice between serving the good or evil. For we read, "And when the 1,000 years are finished, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall come forth to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to the war, the number of whom is as of the sand of the sea. And they went up over the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down of heaven, and devoured them." This means that they must place themselves in a position to be destroyed before divine justice can destroy them. Every man must become his own judge, and with what judgment he judges, he shall be judged, and with what measure he meets, it shall be measured to him again. This is divine law. That is one of the 8 laws of creation. In conclusion, we wish to call attention to our readers to the imagery presented in the 21st chapter of Revelation, wherein John sees the new city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. We read that the city lieth 4 and the length thereof is as great as the breadth. The length and the breadth and the height thereof are equal. As it would take a volume to convey that thought herein embodied, let it suffice to say that when this takes place, it will be because the body has become so highly developed and spiritualized that the Elohim, the matured soul of all the ages, will dwell with men, as the angel said to John in Revelation 21, 3-5. "And I heard a great voice out of the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he shall dwell with them, and they shall be his peoples, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. And he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more. The first things are passed away. And he that sitteth on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he saith, Write, for these words are faithful and true." Again we read in verses 22 and 23 of this chapter, "And I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb are the temple thereof. And the city hath no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine upon it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the lamp thereof is the Lamb." Footnotes. The mere suggestion of the final unity of man and woman opens the door to temptation and deception. When a man who is trying to live the regenerate life, to conquer the sex passions, comes into the presence of a good woman, it seems to stimulate and to strengthen all his powers. It's because it does. He feels assured that she would be a great help to him in the regenerate life in obtaining these grand ultimates. But we speak from the experience of thousands during the last 10 years of our work, when we say that in every case they will find themselves disappointed. They have met the God of generation face to face and are enslaved by him, and the two are forced to separate under great difficulty and sorrow. When one realizes the great truth that there are two factors in the world, creation and recreation, generation and regeneration, and that generation is the one factor now dominating the whole world, he may perhaps understand that no man in union with woman can meet and conquer it. That is patently untrue. He must first absolutely conquer it within himself and all its powers. For in the regeneration, man and woman, in their unity, must have absolute control of the God of creation. Did I pause long enough for you to understand that? Must have absolute control of the God of creation over every creative power in the world. And not only so, but they must be so strong that they can even take of the life, the fires of the Spirit, and control them absolutely, which is an achievement as many times greater than anything we have ever known, as the day is brighter than the night. Because of this, the Lord, by the prophet Isaiah, said, "Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings?" As someone who is, indeed, working with these particular fires, I can tell you that that is patently untrue. I don't say certainty often, right? I say maybes a lot. I say possibly a good bit. I hardly ever say certainties. I have a few times through this particular study, but they have been isolated incidents dealing with specificity. This is one in which I have some authority. I am doing the things that he wished he could. I am manipulating the electromagnetic forces through the express will of God. I am not trying to take control from God. That is important. That is so very extremely important. God created you with purpose in mind. That is true. Go forth, subdue the earth, and be stewards thereof. Multiply and subdue the earth is the actual quote, right? You are meant to be generative, not regenerative. This is a man trying to act holier than thou. That is what's happening here. Life is not about the exclusion. It is about the balance. There are 7 vices, there are 7 virtues. You are meant to balance them. You are not meant to be entirely chaste, and if you are doing it wrong. There are times for being chaste. That is a thing. There is a time to not have sex. It is a part of fasting. For instance, you are meant to dedicate that part of you to God. That is true. But you are meant to partake in this world. That is why you are here. And part of that, one of the better parts of that, is the spiritual union that happens in sexual congress. That is one of the things that is implicit in you. You could be raised in complete isolation. If you were to take a baby and drop him on an island somewheres, and by some miracle this baby managed to survive into adulthood, and he ran into a woman, he would know what to do instinctually. Why? Because that is part of who you are supposed to be. In the same way that you know I need to breathe, you know I need to eat. You know that you need to have sex. The denial of that is something, right, that you are trying to impose upon the will of God. There are times for it. There are times for not eating. There are times even for not breathing. It's part of the meditative practice. We don't deal with the specifics of the meditative practice because that path is yours. You need to find it. I can only give you my experience, and that in particular, we haven't had a reason to delve into yet. Right? It hasn't been brought to light by the text. You are meant to have a partner. It can be difficult, especially in these days, to find a partner who you are aligned with, but if you are seeking it, it shall appear. Here's the kicker. They are not going to be perfect. They are not going to be everything that you desired. You are not going to get your will in everything that you do. You are not going to be able to live in carnality and just have sex all the time. And it's not going to be a thing. I don't care how attracted you are to them. At some point, there will be some difficulties that arise. You will fight over your different beliefs. You will fight on how to accommodate each other. You'll fight over snoring in the bed. You will fight over towels on the floor. You're going to fight with them. It is part of becoming better. It is part of incorporating the best part of them into you and giving them the best part of you. That is the goal of that. The spiritual sexual union, which is a thing. The commingling of your souls with someone else, that is a thing. That is what is happening every single time that you have sex, whether you realize it or not, whether those fluids are able to exchange in full or not. You are still exchanging soul with that person. They will forever hold a piece of you, and you will forever hold a piece of them, even if you don't remember their names. The goal is to find that person, the one who will help you. That doesn't mean that it is some soulmate and you are destined. You have a choice. There is a myriad. There are a lot of people out there who can help you to refine your soul. The right one will appear, and you can call it a soulmate, right? But that is one of many soulmates. All soulmates are not sexual. You can have a best friend who is your soulmate and you never have sexual congress, but you still share your soul with them. You still freely exchange the person who you are with the person who they are, and you incorporate some of them in you, and you give them some of you. That is why we are here. It is for the interaction. Yes, we are on individualized timelines, but we are meant to come into accordance at different points. This right here is restricting you from achieving the full potential. What he was trying to do, he never did. I can promise you that from what I read here in this last section. If your goal is to be chaste, you are doing it wrong. If your goal is to be straight edge and never do any of the bad things, guess what? You're doing it wrong. You're meant to participate in life, and there is no temptation if there has been no pleasure. You are meant to overcome temptation, yes. You are meant to associate, yes. You are meant to grow. You are meant to strengthen. You are meant to be more than you were. Always, absolutely. The path in which you attain that will never be you alone. It will never be you alone. It will never be you alone. There is somebody out there for you. I know if you are single, that is a hard thing to hear because you're looking. But they're out there. Chances are you're not going to the correct places to find them. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I think that I have expressed exactly what I needed to express in this, and so I'm not going to try to extrapolate any further, but there is somebody for you. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I agree with some parts of this, and I absolutely, vehemently disagree with others. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and that I have a tendency to step on toes whenever I relay those beliefs. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. I am doing the things that these people are speculating about. I am laying bare before you the realities of the situation. And you can take those or you can leave those. That is up to you. I am not here to force you. I am not here to convince you. I am here to tell you. I am doing these things. I am living this life, and I am not chaste. Right? I don't go out running around chasing all the tail. I could, but I don't. I am happy with my one. She makes me a better person. We share sexual congress, and that is a perfectly good thing. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If you remain respectful, I let it stay up. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks, because I do not manifest money. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit Steak. Peace.